Hey there, so glad you could stop by to be with us for our chapter spotlight this week. And this week we're spotlighting Jeremiah chapter 43. And we see in verse 1 that the Lord has come to Jeremiah with a word for the people of Judah. And so he wants Jeremiah to go to the people of Judah and tell them not to go into the land of Egypt. So Jeremiah does that. And then in verse 2, there are some men of Judah that come back to Jeremiah, and the word even tells us that they're proud men, and they say to Jeremiah, the Lord our God did not tell you to tell us not to go to Egypt. You're speaking falsely. He didn't tell you to do that. In fact, in verse 3, they go on to say, it was your servant, or not your servant, but your secretary, your scribe, Baruch, who told you to tell us not to go into Egypt. He just wants to see us delivered into the hands of the Chaldeans and to be carried away as captives to Babylon. And I want you to remember that last part there, that we'll be carried away as captives into Babylon. Remember that they're afraid. That's one of the things that they're afraid of. So all of these proud men that we hear about, the captains of the forces, here they go. They take all the people of Judah, the men, women, and children. They take Jeremiah and Baruch, and they go back into Egypt. Now, here we are 900 years after the Lord had delivered them from Egypt. Here they go back into that land that they were delivered from. And they came to the city of Tahpanhes, and that's where they stopped. I read in my notes that there was some type of a government building there, and this building is somewhere that Pharaoh would stop and stay there when he was in the land. So when they got there, the Lord came back to Jeremiah with another word for the people. And he said, what the Lord told Jeremiah to do was to take these big stones and to bury them in the clay that was in front of that government building. And he said, make sure the people of Judah see you do that. And then I have these words for you to tell the people. He said, in verse 10, he says, and say unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will send and take Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will set his throne upon these stones that I have hid, and he shall spread his royal pavilion over them. Now remember, back in verse 3, that was one of the very things they were afraid of, was to be carried off as captives into Babylon. And now the Lord is saying, here you are, you've disobeyed, you didn't stay in the land of Judah like I told you to, you've come into the land of Egypt, and now I'm telling you that King Nebuchadnezzar is going to come and take you captive. In fact, in verse 11, we read he's going to smite the land of Egypt, and some will die, and some will be taken into captivity. And he goes on to say in verses 12 and 13 that the gods of Egypt will be burned down. The houses of the gods of Egypt will be burned down. People will be taken away as captives. He's going to set himself up in the land of Egypt, and he's going to break down all of the images that are in the land of Egypt and burn them with fire. So the chapter ends there. It's a very short chapter. It only has 13 verses. And what I want to say about that is so we had a little history lesson there about Jeremiah and the people of Judah not listening, and then they go on into Egypt like the Lord told them not to. And we won't go into further chapters this week of what happened once they got there. But what I'll say is, how often do we know good and well that the Lord is telling us not to do something or not to go somewhere, and maybe we do it anyway, or maybe we're contemplating doing something that we know the Lord would not have us do. So my challenge for you this week is that we stay in the Word so that we can hear the word of the Lord and clearly know what He would and would not have us do, so we can have victory instead of going back into the land that we were rescued from, like the children of Judah did. So that's what we have for you this week, and hope you enjoyed it, and hope you'll join us next week for our chapter spotlight.